Hey all, so I'm going to jump right in. How we're going to create email outreach from pain points and headlines and how we're going to test and what we're looking for. To start off, we've taken some of our headlines from our EV trailer, and we're going to start first with our general email outreach template. So a general email outreach template has a couple really important points that I think is worthwhile to incorporate. The first is always a compelling subject line. This has an incredible impact on our open rate, and it's important to be testing consistently with different pain points. What's most likely to get us an open, because that's going to ultimately determine the rest of our interactions. The second is this idea of personalizing your opening with an industry insight or a truth bomb. This is really important because it shows the person you're talking to, likely for the first time, that you're worth paying attention to and have an understanding of what they're dealing with from day to day. The next is this idea of incorporating a pain point in a way that feels relatable without feeling like we're coming off completely silly. This is the idea of showing empathy and going along with the struggle of that person you're talking to. This then rolls really well into the whole we get it and your company's understanding of this experience and maybe why you're building this or why you started it or all that other good stuff that again builds credibility for yourself and builds a connection with the reader. One of the next pieces is ultimately we also want to have a brief value-oriented solution. This idea of like, we're not fully pitching, but we do want to talk about some of the outcomes or benefits, kind of keeping it high level, intriguing, but also having some clear articulation of what that's around. The next part is make sure you have some social proof or some credibility to it. Talk about who you've worked with, why you've been in the space for so long, what your own personal history is. The best is if you have a customer quote or somebody from an interview that'll say that has like a really good one-liner that's worthwhile to incorporate along on top of the others of hundreds or tens of people you've talked to. The last two parts are really just like have a clear CTA of like, can we talk? Can you visit the site and register if you think it's for you? And be really specific with like your availability and or your ask of that person. Then always make sure you finish with a good closing professional line. And if you want to put the CTA in the PS line, it can make it a little bit more low friction. Now, but for some other reasons before we jump in, the other angles that in the framework I actually want to use is this idea of that there's a product focused outreach versus a validation focused outreach, of which is like, I'm not selling. And the last piece is you can kind of influence. The last piece of that is that you can also then kind of introduce a referral element to remix either of the two above ideas. Again, if meta wasn't already successful for you, that's okay, because what we're going to do is a great way to start testing your headlines, even if they didn't resonate on meta in the same way. Kind of how we talked about before, we're still going to want to take our 10 to 15 most weighted headlines or pain points we think that are most impactful, use batch emails, come up with this idea of using our headlines to test pain points and an ability to open it. And then as we go, kind of adjust the pain points that we're referencing within the email or within the subject line with a call to action of the website or to reply. And we start to measure over time what our engagement rates are with that, as well as behavior that's taken on the website. Ways to measure this include looking at things like open rate or click-through rate. If you're using Google Analytics, it's looking at, from what UTM source, aka the email came from, and what kind of actions did that person take on the website? What kind of engagement did batches from each individual subject line take? Did you have pre-orders? Did you have signups? Did you have downloadable content that was booked? So let's dive in and start off with this idea of validation and the not selling template. First goal is subject lines. Always have more than one. I recommend 1 to 3. The idea is we're going to reference a pain point here, but we might be using you language and less of a headline. So I can't remember the last time I was finally able to tow stress 3. For example, I found a way to tow without stress, or finally I find a way to tow without stress and make your life way easier, or you can't imagine what the difference will be now that I figured out how to blank. Again, 2 or 3 subject lines, and you're going to want to batch and test those. The next format, again, is this idea of like, we're talking about, I don't want to sell anything, but I'm reaching out because I want to talk to some people in this field, aka in the customer's field. I kind of hint at my truth bomb. I'm going to talk about why our team has that social credit and that social proof of what we've been working with and how we're like trying to solve this, hint to that value-oriented solution. And then you'll see here my call to action is I want 15 minutes to talk. And I'm asking people for their insights. If you don't have something you can offer them in exchange, ego and padding is probably the best bet. And it's kind of the example. If you want money, ask for advice. And if you want advice, ask for money. Same premise applies here where we want to sell them, but we want to ask for the advice first. And that, or the idea that their product or their help, or the idea that their support is going to have a huge impact, or the idea is that their insights are going to have a huge impact. And we're trying to play to that. And as a founder, this is a great way to build some early relationships with people in the space if you're in an industry or if you're selling a high ticket item. The last little bit will be the call to action is to explore the site and shoot a message back when they have a moment. Again, the call to action means 15 minutes. The next one is more product focus. Again, multiple subject lines. You'll see here we lead right away with the truth bomb. We kind of make a value point association and kind of without saying exactly why we're doing this. And we talk about the social proof. And then you'll see here, there's two versions. I like the bullet points. You're selling. Let's not hide the fact that you're selling at this point. So come out with your 3 most important benefits, make them clear, make them bullet points. And again, call to action, 20-minute chat, secondary, check out the site and get back to me. Some people do this as a full text version. I think it becomes really long for scannability, so readability. I would encourage you to use the bullet points. The last example is the focus, product focus and referral. So this is where we're taking either of the two above and we're kind of adding this other element, which is, hey, blank person on my team thought we should connect, so figured I'd shoot you an email. They gave me a brief background on your firm's work, or like, let's say on that you're an avid camper, it might be a good fit, or it might be facing similar challenges, whatever that language is. The goal is it doesn't actually have to be like that person on your team knows the customer. It's just that X person said to reach out. This seems really cheesy. It actually works surprisingly well. I would incorporate that as a remix on one of the two above. And ultimately, the goal is to see which emails get you the most responses or gets you the action you want to see on site the most. In summary, I want to draw this back up. If you had success with meta ads, then it's really easy to take your best performing pain points, build them into your subject lines, build them into your email template. If you didn't have as much success as you'd like on meta ads, this is a great opportunity to do batch testing with different pain points for different headlines and different body texts. And what you'll start to see, especially if you're using a UTM code to track behavior and not just email replies, you'll start to see what kind of pain points lead to opens for the subject lines, what kind of pain points or benefits lead to click-throughs to the website, and ultimately what types of pain points are leading to responses and engagement, both in communication, but as online behavior and action. I think this is super helpful if you can learn to master it. I think this is super helpful if you can learn to master it. I promise this is a great way to reach an audience, both in a B2B space and in a higher ticket item space, even if you're just trying to collect user feedback for maybe a lower ticket item as well.